One, I came from a broken family, and growing up, to me, love wasn't something that lasted. Love wasn't something that was safe, because my father left when I was 2, my sister was 4, and most of, unfortunately to say, my aunts and uncles, they cheated on each other, they got divorces. Even my grandfather, when my grandmother was 52, I'll never forget it, he left her for another woman, and I was 11 years old, and it really just destroyed me. And from that point on, men weren't to be trusted, and love didn't last, and it affected me when I got into high school and I got into what you call quote-unquote serious relationships. And the first serious relationship I had, I really thought he loved me. He says, well, show me, and he put me to the test. And I did, and at the age of 15, I lost my virginity, thinking it was going to cause this huge, great emotional bond between us, be on cloud 9, and I really thought we'd just be so in love. And it was interesting, it just distorted and destroyed any love in that relationship, and all respect was just thrown out the window, because if I couldn't respect my own body, he wasn't going to respect it, you know. And honestly, I lost a lot of respect for myself. And the thing is, once you cross that line, once you do that, you really think, well, it's too late. What's gone is gone, right? It's done. And so I spiraled into a series of really bad promiscuous relationships, and also just the lifestyle that follows with that. They go hand in hand. And the further you go into sin, the deeper you get, and you don't realize how far you're really going until you're there, and you just feel so buried. And I got into the partying, I got into the drinking, I got into the clubbing. And a lot of it, honestly, was just to numb the pain, to numb the actions, to numb the reality of what I was doing to myself and allowing it, you know? And after a while, I just didn't know what to do, and I was at such a loss. But our God is a God of second chances, and he was not done with me. And my mother came up to me and she said, Crystalina, there's a chastity talk, and you're going. And I made fun of it, I laughed, I was just, I'm not going. And I thought, okay, I'll sit in the back of the church for 15 minutes, that's it, I'm gone. And in that 15 minutes, I thought I was gonna sit there. God just changed my life completely. There was a guy who was very honest, blunt, and really talked about all the girls and his own past. And the one thing that I noticed that pierced the darkness that I was living in, that nobody could penetrate, was that he wasn't ashamed of himself. I longed not to be ashamed of myself. I longed not to live in that filth and in that fear. And when I saw that in him, and there was that message that you can start over, that God can make you new, I clinged onto it, because that's really what I was looking for in all of that false love. I needed to know that I was wanted, that I was loved, and I saw that message in him, and I grabbed onto it. And slowly, by the grace of God, I didn't become a saint overnight, granted, nobody does. I was able to turn my life around, and I didn't fall again. And in that, I found my call, what I felt like God was calling me to do with my life, and that was help young people learn the message that it doesn't matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, that God loves you exactly where you're at, and he wants to forgive you, and he wants to make your life new and whole, but you have to just take that step, that leap of faith towards him. And I just wanted to scream from the rooftops that you can start over, because nobody was saying that. That was a non-existent message back then. And I just saw my girlfriends falling over and over and really getting hurt, and they just thought, well, that's how it is. This is who I am now, and it's not, and that's the lie. And so then I flew out to become a chastity speaker, answering God's call and learn about it, and that's where I met Jason at this chastity conference, right? Who knew? Anyway, then I got into the chastity ministry and speaking, and Jason and I obviously ended up getting married. And I feel like I had a second conversion where I actually went deeper in my faith and in this call that God was asking me to do within my life. after a couple years of marriage, and right now we have 5 children, 1 in heaven, so 6 total, I became a mother. A lot of things started surfacing in my life, negative things. I was angry all the time. I just all these emotions. I didn't understand what was going on with me. And I realized from a young age, all the way up to where I was at that point in my life, I stuffed so much that I couldn't stuff it anymore. And it was coming out on my kids. It was coming out in my marriage. It was coming out in my relationship with God. And even this anger I kind of developed. And so I went to counseling, and I got a really good spiritual director, and a lot of time in adoration. I really dived into my own brokenness, my own woundedness, and that was hard. One, it was hard to go to counseling, because when you think of counseling, you think of, well, something's wrong with you. You've got a problem, and it's a shameful kind of condemnation that surrounds getting help. Then I realized there's nothing to be ashamed of to get healed, to be healed, to go through that process of healing so that I can get rid of the wounds, get rid of the handicap that I was holding on to become that strong woman of God that He was calling me to be. And a lot of stuff came up that happened to me when I was a child that I didn't even know was there. And that was really hard for me. And having to go through all of those all of the yucky feelings and things that come up with that, you have to face that. That took some serious courage that I didn't have, but that God gave me. It was a 3-year major healing process in my life, because these things didn't happen just overnight, and you're not going to get healed by them overnight. You know, it's a process. And our God, Jesus, is gentle, and He lets you go as far as He knows you can handle. Because certain realizations I had, I could only handle those in that moment and not drop more. Go to adoration. Cry for hours if you need to. Write letters to these people and burn them, throw them, like, get it out in one way or another. And I felt so light. I felt just this weight lifted off of me. He will lead you. He will guide you. Give Him your healing process, because He sees everything. He sees the ugly. He sees the good. He sees the bad. He sees the memories. And it's like He'll lead you along. He led me along so gently, and it took some time. But in the end, the rewards of that, I feel so much stronger and confident, and not living under the secrets, not living under the fear, not always like just wondering, am I going to be found out, or am I being a hypocrite, am I being fake, and having all these struggles. And if you can hand them over to the King of Kings, He will take care of you. There's nothing too big that He can't handle or walk you through, that in the end He's not going to give you the grace to deal with. And I realized that I was allowing the devil to have so much power or control, or just the vices I was getting, by keeping that wound, by holding on to it, by hiding it, not bringing it to the light. And that's where he really had that control. Because if you don't heal those wounds, he'll just stay there and fester, just like an infection, and it'll get worse and it'll spread. It's not worth it. The pain, I'd rather go through the pain than go through generations of just carrying this around. Because if you don't deal with it, then your kids are going to deal with it, good or bad. You will hand it down to your children. And I said, in my life, in my family, with my kids, it stops with me. This will stop with me, because I did not want to give the same thing to my kids, and I was going down that path. The things that you get into just because you don't want to face it, you know, but if you could fight past that fear, it's like God just wants to free you, and He loves you. And this was huge for me, that God loved me exactly where I was at. He loved me in all of my yuck, and He loved me in my sin and in my brokenness and all of the things that I couldn't stand about myself. That's where He wanted to love me, because only He could heal me in those areas if I let Him. The biggest gift that God gave me out of my healing process is that I'm not ashamed anymore. I can actually sit here, which is a miracle in itself, okay? I am not ashamed of what happened to me. I'm not ashamed of the things that I did, and half of them I can't even remember. It's really a beautiful gift. Like, God really makes you just so pure, and He takes the yuck from you. But in replace, He gives you something so much more.